we have Verena Zimmermann from ETH Zurich. She holds the professor position, and she will tell us how collaboration can be fruitful in the times, or in Med World times. So please give her a warm applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and today with you look into the question better together and to discuss a little bit the resilience of human technology teams. At ETH, I lead the group Security, Privacy and Society, and what we do there is human-centered cybersecurity. So essentially that means that we study the human factors in cybersecurity. This is more than just phishing training. It's like the human factor weaves in all the areas of cybersecurity and does not only concern end users, but also developers and cybersecurity professionals. And you will see that with the example that I brought for you today. It is also important for me to note that what we do is more than sheer usability. Usability is, of course, an essential part of cybersecurity solutions that should actually be used by humans. However, there's more to that. We build our research on strong psychological foundations, starting with the human and looking into what are their needs, their challenges, how do they actually process information, take decisions, and how can we align cybersecurity solutions with that. The idea is to thereby enhance the match between humans and technology and to make humans or to enable humans to contribute to security in a positive way. So overall, you could say our mission is to turn the human risk into resilience. The example I brought today for a human technology team is that of experts and AI. I brought that example because it concerns cybersecurity professionals, so experts in cybersecurity, and I thought that might be of interest for you, as probably many of you are cybersecurity professionals in different roles. So the background for that project that we do in our research group is simple, right? Cybersecurity, you might agree, is a very complex field. It's very technology-driven. It requires domain-specific knowledge to navigate these challenges. However, on the other side, there's the cybersecurity professionals that are a scarce resource. So the expertise is highly thought after, but scarce, and there's a workforce gap somehow. And then there's these recent advances in AI, where of course it's like, there's the immediate idea to say, well, if there's AI and AI can do so many things, why not relieve cybersecurity professionals in their current role with AI tools? Why not support them with AI to decrease their workload and to ideally have them perform as a team better as compared to either on their own? So if we look at experts and AI, and especially the advances at AI, there's many headlines around, of course. Especially when it comes to AI, headlines might be something like better at everything, 21 things that AI can do better than humans, better, faster, cheaper, safer. So it appears, at least from these headlines, that AI can do a lot of things and definitely relieve professionals from some tasks, or perhaps even replace professionals in some tasks. And that's why we look into, is that the case? How can expert AI collaboration be designed? Are they better together? Question mark. Is it better for the professionals to get AI support? And is the performance of both combined actually better? Well, that's also a question that drove other people's research, who just recently published a work that was a systematic review of more than 100 experimental studies on the performance of human-AI combinations as compared to humans and AI performance individually. So what do you think? What was the outcome? If we combine AI and humans, does the performance increase or decrease? Who thinks it increases? Some, most. Who thinks it decreases? The rest? Well, very interestingly, over all the 100-something study, they found that the combination, the performance was worse as compared to either the best of the humans or the best of AI alone. So that sounds a bit paradoxical, right? You think you combine two good things, and then what comes out is worse? Well, I think that warrants a closer look. So when you look into these studies individually, what they actually found is that when humans outperformed AI alone, like when there were tasks where humans excelled, then there were performance gains taking AI as a support tool, augmenting the expertise. However, when AI already outperformed the human, then there were performance losses in the combination. Okay, so before we start designing expert AI collaboration, the first insight is we have to pick the right tasks. So we need to be aware of what AI is especially good at, something like speed, precision, repetitive tasks, or very data-driven decisions. And then on the other hand, we need to be aware of what experts or what humans are especially good at. And this is tasks that involve creativity, content creation, emotional and social intelligence, strategy, experience and contextualization of information, and also handling uncertainty and flexibly adapting to unforeseen circumstances. So to turn the combination into a success, we need the right combination of tasks, but then, at least from that study, that should be possible to support experts with AI. Okay, but then knowing we might need to pick the right tasks still doesn't really help us. The question still is, how can we design the collaboration? What should it actually look like, especially in that high-stakes environment of cybersecurity? And here, a member of my team, Nele, is conducting a multi-study approach to actually look into what are the factors to turn that combination into a success. So in her first approach in an interview study with professionals like you, she explored what does their work environment look like? What are the requirements and boundary conditions for employing AI there, and what could that look like? And based on the insights, she then focused iteratively on two specific concepts, that's transparency and autonomy. So a closer look at each of those. As I said, she started with an interview study with experts to first get a feel for what's the current state with AI and cybersecurity and what can it actually do, what's the limits. And then what we found in that interview study, or what the professionals expressed is, yes, they indeed say AI could improve their workflows. Yes, they would be very happy to be relieved from extensive or repetitive tasks. And yes, they would also appreciate some help with more discretionary tasks. But, and here's the big but, the AI autonomy level that they would grant the AI very much depends on a complex risk-benefit analysis. So just AI autonomy, I mentioned that just to get everyone in the loop. What I mean with that is there's not the one AI tool, but AI can act on different levels of autonomy. On the most basic level, it's all on the human, it's a manual task. On the second level, AI could help with, for example, acquiring information. On the next level, it could also analyze or rate this information for you. And then on the next level, it could also provide you with a certain recommendation on what to do. But it requires human approval for this decision to be executed. The next level, even a bit higher than, would be the decision that AI takes will be executed if there's not a veto from the human side in a certain time frame. And then finally, the topmost level would be AI acts completely autonomous, right? So that's, of course, difficult to say what to implement when, and this is also what the professionals expressed at the big challenge. And from our interviews, we thought that AI autonomy, this risk-benefit trade-off, or this balancing that the professionals described, very much depended on two things. So on the left-hand side is the task, right? So you need to know the task that I want to hand over to AI at some level. Is there a capability fit with what AI can do and what the human can do? How urgent is it and how critical is that task? And on the other side, on the right-hand side, we have trust. So that was really a reoccurring scheme in all our interviews where people said it's important that I can trust AI. The more I trust, the more I would be willing to grant a higher autonomy level. And then trust, again, very much depended on transparency. So the professionals said, I would like to know what's going on and how that AI model comes to a certain decision for it to trust. So we said, yes, that's a good starting point. We will look into that in the next study. We will design a system, or we will explore how actually transparency influences trust. And This is important to mention here, that trust is not something that, like, we don't want super high trust just like that, but we want calibrated trust. What does that mean? So trust needs to be well calibrated in the sense of it needs to be matched with the AI capabilities. If the professionals trust the tool more than what it's actually able to do, then we have over trust. If it's the other way around, like under trust, then the AI system will not be used. It will be disused, and then it's not helpful. But the other side perhaps is even more dangerous. Like if we put over trust and over reliance in a system, then that can lead to potentially dangerous outcomes. And I think it's important here to differentiate between the two terms, trust and reliance. So trust is the attitudinal component where I self-reportedly say, I do trust the system. And then reliance is the behavioral component that describes to what extent I rely on the decisions or the recommendations of the AI tool and comply with that. So it's two different things. If you are interested in reading that paper, here's a link. I will also show that again later if you don't catch it now. But I think that's what we picked up from the interview study as one of the important findings and that we wanted to explore in more detail. So to do so, we first had to select a relevant and critical cybersecurity task, right? You remember that trade-off, on the left-hand side the task, on the right-hand side the trust. So we did a huge requirements analysis of all kinds of tasks in the cybersecurity area, and then together again with professionals narrowed it down to a task that they deemed relevant and critical and that would be suitable in that context, and agreed on malicious domain blocking as a task, as a use case for our study. And for that malicious domain blocking task, we designed two dashboards, where one used explainable AI and the other didn't, to enhance the transparency. So we had that dashboard that we showed to the professionals. It's just like snippets from the dashboard, but it contained 4 parts essentially. The first part said, like, what is the AI's decision, like to block or to allow the domain, is it malicious or not? And then the transparent condition, they saw the B part. This is where the model or where the dashboard tried to explain how the AI model came to this decision. So it explained which of the features of the URL, for example, it took, how they were weighted, and why this was important for the overall decision. And then in the part C, we had like a descriptive list of all the features that the AI model took as a basis for its decision or recommendation. And then the part D, that was the task for the professionals in our study. The professionals, based on this information, had actually to decide, would I block or allow that domain? We conducted an online study with more than 100 cybersecurity professionals in a between subject study. So that means that, like, there were 2 conditions. The one group got the transparent dashboard and the other group didn't. And then what we measured were these 3 things essentially. So we measured trust in that AI system, we measured the behavioral component reliance, and we measured performance and task load. And again, here I would be very curious to hear from your side what you think what the outcome was. So do you think in the transparent condition, was the trust higher or lower as compared to the non-transparent? Who think it was higher? Yeah, some. Mm-hmm. Who thinks it was lower? Also a few. And as for a reliance, do you think in the transparent conditions, the professionals more went along with the AI recommendations or less? Who thinks more? Yeah. Who thinks less? Half perhaps. And then performance and task load. Like, who thinks that the performance increased with a transparent version as compared to the non-transparent? Increased? Yeah, some. Decreased? Okay, so we have mixed responses here, which is great because that's why we do the research, right? We don't know beforehand. Of course, we have hypotheses or we have something that we would love to see, but that's not always the case. So you might be a bit surprised to see the results here. So actually, the transparent condition was not able to foster calibrated appropriate trust. So interestingly, after acting with the transparent version, the trust in the AI system decreased. also, the professionals in that conditions, they compared to the other conditions, there were no improvements in terms of recognizing false AI classifications that we built in on purpose to check whether people just always go along or not, right? Then the next part is we saw that the trust decreased after the interaction. However, people still relied very much on the tool, right? They said, trust goes down after interacting with the tool. However, I still follow the recommendations. So there's also a bit of a paradox between what people say or their attitude and then what they actually do. So there's like a trend towards over-reliance. And then finally, what is the good thing is the explanations that we provided, and there were essentially like more information on the dashboard. It did not increase the task load, but also not the performance overall. Very interesting findings. Is that frustrating? I don't know, but it's super interesting. And of course, we wanted to learn why is that the case. So we sat down and deliberately checked all of these qualitative answers that we also collected alongside the quantitative measures to learn why or how the professionals made their decisions. And what we learned from that, so what is our like working hypothesis from the answers is that the transparency or the trust very much depends not on the transparency per se, but on the AI model behind that. So experts, over time, in the case of malicious domain blocking, they might have formed a model themselves for which of the features they deem more relevant for judging what is potentially malicious and what is not. And if they see in the transparent condition that the AI model very much aligns with their model, that might increase trust. But if it does not, so if there's a mismatch between the AI model and the expert model, then it might actually decrease trust. That means transparency is relevant and crucial, but it's not the only factor. So what lies behind the transparency is equally important. And that led us to the final study that we are currently working on, where we also learned from the interviews that trust is not like a one-off thing, but is something that is built over time and with experience. So you also saw that in the trade-off figure earlier, where it said experience with the tool, multiple interactions. This is essential for building trust. It's a process. And also when experts talked about AI, they often did that in a way as if they were talking about a new employee. They said something like, if I used an AI system, well, then in the beginning, I would repetitively give it non-essential tasks to just check how it does, to have a close oversight of the performance. And if I'm happy with what I see, then I would grant a little bit more responsibility towards the AI system, right? So a little bit like you would do it with a human or a new employee. And to allow for that trust building, many of the tools that are currently in the market, they come at a certain AI autonomy level. What we want to do now is to change that to allow for this trust building and an adaptation. So what we are working on now is to build an AI system that for the same task allows to adapt to different autonomy levels, to build this appropriate trust, and also for the expert to allow to use it on a level that they feel comfortable with or that the organization mandates, perhaps. So you could, for example, start with the information acquisition level and see, well, the information that the AI tool provides to me, I'm happy with that. Now I'm fine for also receiving a recommendation from the AI tool, but I would still be the person to take the final decision. I will not go above that, right? And we now hope from that ongoing study to learn a little bit more about how that adaptation process, how it influences interaction and trust over time, and what it actually is that we can then finally implement and practice for, well, supporting you in your daily work life. So to come to a conclusion, the question I raised in the beginning was, AI and experts or humans and technology, are they better together? And the answer here is from our studies is yes and no, but there's at least very important insights or steps that you need to consider along the way if you want to make them better together. So the first, what we learned is you need to identify the tasks in which the humans excel and to augment those with AI. The other way around, it doesn't really work. So it's about intelligence augmentation. Then the second is transparency is crucial. It's super important, but it does not help per se. It's super important what lies behind the transparency and to ensure that there's a match between the model that the expert built over time and with experience, and what the AI model does. And then we also learned trust builds over time and with interaction experience. So it could be very worthwhile to consider that and to allow for the experts to try out in the organizational context at different levels, first like with a low-risk approach, and if that is successful, perhaps to try a little bit more, and or to also go back. And then finally, what we cannot say often enough in that context is, of course, cybersecurity is a high-stakes environment. So whatever task we transfer to AI, we need to make sure it's a relevant one to make it worth the effort to find out how the collaboration can be best designed. But also we need to look into the criticality of the task and to make sure that the human is kept in the loop and still has the chance to implement human oversight in the end. With that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. And also, I have brought a lot of QR codes for you today. The first is if you want to learn more about our research. The left one is our website. If you want to read the paper that I mentioned earlier, it's an open access paper published with Usenix. You can do so. And then if you want to be part of our next research on emerging trends in cybersecurity, and you want to take part in an interview study with our team members, that would be the right-hand side QR code. There's also a lot of flyers here that would provide you with some more information on that. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Verena. We have time for questions. There's one in the second row. We have a microphone, hold on, because I think people in the back cannot hear it otherwise.
Thank you. Thank you for all the insights you presented. If I would like to implement an application today for cybersecurity professionals, and you showed us an UI you created for the test, what would you recommend to have it more transparent or less transparent to get the best experience for the user?
It depends on the user. And definitely to have it transparent. So especially for the experts, I think it's very important to have it transparent for them to allow that trust building process. But as I said, it's only like the stepping stone. It does not ultimately increase trust, but it's the necessary thing to do first to allow for building trust. And then, of course, it depends on what the AI model does, right? And then perhaps, and I think that's also our working hypothesis from that interview study, I cannot confirm now, but I would assume that, well, experts, in the case of malicious domain blocking, they might have a mental model on how, when, why to block certain domains. However, lay users, they might not, because they might never have thought about that task in the first place. So I'm not sure whether providing lots of information of all the features would actually support them somehow, because then they cannot really make that cross-check between their model and the AI model if there's no one they have built themselves, right? So I think there it would be a different effect or a different interaction. Mm-hmm.
More questions. Second row.
Thank you. You made a comparison between AI models and experienced people in security. What would you do? How would that look like if the people are not experienced, but just come, let's say, right from the university and need to learn being an experienced domain blocker? Is then the AI model more supporting for them?
You mean like if we augment not like experts, but people that just
Correct.
start in their roles?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I think a little bit related to my answer earlier, I think like the effect might be a little bit different. So if it's people coming from a university, they also might have a strong technical background and idea about malicious domain blocking, for example, or whatever that task might be. And then I think the same would apply as for experts who are in the field longer. The match is important between the model that the person has and the model the AI is actually built on. And then if it's like really lay users who never had any technical encounters and no idea about malicious domain blocking, for them it might look different. Because then they cannot like cross-check that AI model.
Okay. Thanks.
And there was another one also in the second row.
So thanks for the talk, very interesting. And If I followed correctly, in tasks where humans perform better alone than AI alone, it was a help to add AI to make the humans more efficient
Yes.
or better.
Yes.
What about tasks where AI is better alone than humans alone? Is there anything we should do, or just let AI do its task itself?
That's a really good question. So just from that meta review that I cited in the beginning, right, it appears that the performance of humans and AI, where AI alone is already better than the human, it decreases. So as you said, the initial thought would be, yeah, well, then take the human out of that, right? And just have AI do it. However, then we learned, like in other talks today, we learned a lot about the resilience of critical infrastructures and such, right? I think even for these tasks, we would still need to think about how to keep the human in the loop, to know what's going on and to be able to take over in cases of crisis or ambivalence. We also know that attacks is something that is like constantly evolving and perhaps where an AI model cannot yet react to. But we, for example, know that humans are better to adapt to unforeseen circumstances very quickly. So considering that for the overall system resilience, I still think we need to take the human and to keep them in the loop to be able to take over. So we cannot like completely get rid of them and automate them away.
Okay, thanks.
So, Verena, if I may, I've also one question that I'd like to hear, it's because there's two words in your talk that I missed, and I would expect to hear them. One word is confidence, and the other word is bias. Can you explain how these two terms relate to your work? So let me be concrete. Isn't the question, do I have confidence in the system, not trust? So what is the interplay between confidence and trust? And the second one like the bias, isn't there a bias when humans use systems? They may be biased from all kinds of influences. Shouldn't they be considered? Probably that's part of follow-up work.
So I think the trust that we looked at is something that can turn into confidence over time, right? In the beginning, when I have few interactions with AI, I can only trust because I have limited experience to look on. But then over time, the more results I have, the more sure I can be that something will happen the way I predicted, the more I can be confident in the system. So I think that might be something to look into in our ongoing project where we consider multiple interactions over time. And bias, you mean related to the human or AI?
Well, to the human perception of the AI.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, I mean, humans, they make so many decisions on a daily basis that, of course, they are often based on heuristics and biases that work out in most of the cases, but sometimes they don't. And I think perhaps in our second study, that might be an example of a bias somehow. So people like decreasing their trust, but still relying on that because they don't have another heuristic to fall back on, right? So there, a heuristic could also be a bias in that case, then might come into play.
Right, thank you. All right, I think there's no more question. Then let's give an applause to Verena once again. Thank you.
Thank you.